There's a brutal truth that lingers in the background of modern relationships, something that many women know deep down but will never openly admit. In a world where men are constantly being told to do better, few are brave enough to ask what men are truly facing beneath the surface. Today, Calvin Reid rips off the mask and dives headfirst into the uncomfortable realities about masculinity, validation, and hidden expectations. This isn't about blame, it's about truth. Men have been conditioned from a very young age to be the pillar of strength in every situation. They're taught, often without words, that their value is directly tied to how much they can endure without breaking. Crying is weakness. Doubt is weakness. Fear is weakness. And in the eyes of many, even asking for help is weakness. The message is clear. A real man handles it all silently, stoically, and without needing anything in return. But here's the paradox that most men live with, one that few women are willing to admit. Strength is expected without recognition, and vulnerability is punished. The moment a man opens up about his struggles, his depression, his anxiety, his fears of failure, something shifts. At first, he may be met with sympathy, but over time, those same admissions start to erode how he is perceived. The admiration that once came from being the strong, silent type fades, replaced by a subtle discomfort, even disappointment. It's not that women are heartless or cruel, it's that many have internalized the same narrative. A man should be able to handle his problems on his own, and if he can't, he's less desirable. This leads to a heartbreaking reality for many men. They suffer silently, not because they want to be silent, but because experience has taught them that opening up often makes things worse. A man who breaks down is rarely met with the same nurturing support that a woman would receive in the same situation. In fact, he may be seen as a burden, a liability, or someone who no longer fits the role of protector and provider. Even in relationships, this dynamic plays out constantly. Women often say they want their man to be emotionally available, but when he finally is, it shakes their image of him. That moment of raw honesty can create discomfort because it clashes with the protective, reliable figure they've built in their mind. Some women will pull away. Others may lose attraction, often without fully realizing why. And so, the modern man is caught in a silent war between the need to be understood and the pressure to be invulnerable. He's praised for being strong, but the path to that strength is a lonely one. He's encouraged to open up, but punished when he does. This contradiction forces men to bury their emotions, to smile while suffering, and to play the role that everyone expects, even when it's destroying them inside. But this isn't just about men. It's about all of us. Because as long as we continue to demand strength without understanding the price it comes with, we will keep building relationships based on illusions, not truth. And the longer that illusion stands, the more damage it causes, both to men who suffer in silence and to women who can't figure out why their strong, silent man slowly turned distant, angry, or broken. There is a hard truth that lingers in the background of almost every romantic relationship, but few are brave enough to speak it aloud. Most men are not loved for who they are, but for what they can provide. And it's not always financial. It could be emotional strength, leadership, protection, status, or even a sense of security. But the point remains, a man's value is almost always tied to his utility. Remove that utility and watch how quickly the love changes. Calvin Reid explains that this dynamic is not about villainizing women. It's about confronting a reality that modern men face, but rarely acknowledge out loud. The truth is, a man who stops producing, stops leading, or stops winning often finds himself slowly slipping into invisibility, even in the eyes of the woman who once claimed to love him most. He may still be appreciated, respected, even cared for, but the deep, passionate admiration that fuels true intimacy, that often begins to fade. This isn't just anecdotal. We see it in the divorce courts, in the rising number of single fathers, in the silent stories of men who once had it all and lost everything when they could no longer provide. These are not rare exceptions, they are increasingly common. And while the cultural narrative often blames the man for not trying hard enough, not being ambitious enough, not being emotionally available, what's rarely addressed is how conditional love has become for men. Many women may not even be aware of this dynamic themselves. They'll say, "I love him no matter what." But what they really mean is, "I love him as long as he stays the version of himself that I admired in the beginning." That version was likely driven, successful, emotionally solid, and in control. But when life throws curveballs, when the job is lost, when the confidence breaks, when the man begins to doubt himself, something shifts, often silently, often permanently. Men begin to sense this shift long before it's ever spoken. They notice the slight withdrawal in tone, the lack of admiration in her eyes, the unspoken comparison to other men, more driven, more secure, more together. This breeds resentment, shame, and isolation, and instead of talking about it, which they've learned is dangerous, they bottle it up. They either work harder to prove themselves again, or they shut down entirely, convinced that no one really loves them, only the version of them that performs. The brutal truth is this: men are not taught that they are lovable just for existing. They are taught that love must be earned, kept, and fought for, constantly. This mindset fuels incredible ambition and achievement, yes, but it also creates a deep existential loneliness. Because if your worth is tied to what you can give, what happens when you have nothing left to give? Until we are willing to have honest conversations about this, as Calvin Reid challenges us to do, we will continue raising generations of men who live with the quiet fear that they are only as good as their last paycheck, their last heroic act, or their last show of confidence. And we will keep encouraging women to seek partners based on surface-level security, not inner substance. Love without utility is rare, but it is real. The question is, are we willing to admit how often we settle for the opposite? The phrase, "nice guys finish last," is often tossed around casually, almost as if it's a joke. A piece of cynical advice passed between friends after another disappointing romantic failure. But beneath that phrase lies a painful reality many men live through, a reality that Calvin Reid brings into the spotlight with raw honesty. The idea of being nice, kind, polite, emotionally available, supportive, has been sold to men for decades as the ideal path to a woman's heart. But when put to the test in the real world, that path often leads to confusion, rejection, and heartbreak. The truth is, nice in itself isn't enough, and in many cases, it's not even what women are drawn to. What women are attracted to and what they say they want are often two very different things. Ask a woman what she wants in a man, and she'll often list things like kindness, loyalty, emotional availability, sensitivity. But observe her actual behavior, and a pattern frequently emerges. Attraction tends to gravitate toward confidence, dominance, assertiveness, sometimes even arrogance. Men who set boundaries. Men who aren't afraid to say no. Men who command respect, not just offer affection. The nice guy often makes the mistake of believing that love can be earned through consistent goodness. He believes that if he just gives more, sacrifices more, proves himself more, she'll eventually choose him. But this belief turns his kindness into a transaction. He becomes passive, overly agreeable, too eager to please. And this passivity, while well-intentioned, drains the polarity and mystery from the relationship. It's not about being a jerk. It's about the unspoken truth that desire isn't created by comfort. It's created by tension, by contrast, by the feeling of being captivated. Women may never openly admit this, But the men who challenge them, who keep them guessing a little, who stand strong in their values, those men leave a deeper emotional impression. These men don't chase approval. They don't over-explain. They have a sense of purpose that doesn't revolve around pleasing a woman, and that self-containment is incredibly attractive. It signals leadership. It signals strength. It signals value. The tragedy is that many nice guys become bitter. They see women choosing men who treat them poorly or who don't put them on a pedestal, and they internalize the belief that women must not actually want a good man. But this isn't entirely accurate. Women do want a good man, but one who is also strong, grounded, and unapologetically masculine. A man who is kind, but not a pushover. Loving, but not needy. Empathetic, but not emotionally dependent. The nice guy often forgets to develop his edge, that quiet confidence that says, "I know my worth, and I won't compromise it." This is the brutal truth. Niceness without strength comes off as weakness, and weakness, whether women admit it or not, kills attraction. Men must learn that being kind is not the same as being desirable. Desire is earned not through sacrifice, but through presence, through purpose, through an energy that says, "I am enough, with or without your approval." And once the nice guy discovers this, something incredible happens. He stops begging for love and starts attracting it. He becomes someone who gives, not to earn, but because it's who he is. He becomes assertive without being aggressive, grounded without being cold. He steps into his masculine energy without apology, and suddenly, he's not finishing last anymore. He's leading with authenticity, and the right women can feel the difference. There is a concept that has been deeply misunderstood, not just by men, but by women as well. It's called hypergamy, the idea that women naturally seek to marry up, to find a partner who is superior in some way, whether socially, financially, emotionally, or intellectually. While it may sound harsh or opportunistic, hypergamy isn't a character flaw. It's a deeply rooted biological instinct that has been part of human evolution for thousands of years. For generations, a woman's survival and the success of her offspring depended on choosing the best possible mate, someone who could provide protection, resources, and strength. These instincts haven't disappeared just because we live in modern cities with Wi-Fi and food delivery apps. They've simply evolved. And today, they manifest in the form of women subconsciously scanning for the man who is better than the last, better than the competition, better than her current partner in some cases. This scanning isn't always conscious. It might not even be something she would admit to herself. But it reveals itself in small ways, in who she pays attention to, who she compares her partner to, who she fantasizes about. The brutal truth is that many women are silently assessing whether the man they're with is the best they can do. And when they start to feel he's no longer growing, no longer ambitious, no longer striving, doubts creep in. This creates an immense, often invisible pressure on men. Men know, instinctively or through bitter experience, that they are constantly being evaluated, not just for who they are, but for who they could become. If a man stagnates, even briefly, the risk is real. He may no longer be seen as valuable. His worth isn't static. It's always being measured against what other men are doing, earning, building. And most devastatingly, this process often unfolds in silence. Women are socialized to believe they shouldn't judge their partner based on status or potential. Many will say, "I don't care about money," or "I just want a good man." And many truly believe that. But actions speak louder than words. Time and again, we see women leaving long-term partners after those men hit a rough patch, not because they're bad people, but because hypergamy kicked in and whispered, "You can do better." What makes this worse is the shame surrounding the conversation. If a man brings up hypergamy, he's labeled bitter or insecure. If a woman acknowledges it, she's seen as shallow or gold-digging. But the truth isn't that simple. Hypergamy isn't about greed. It's about biology, psychology, and a world where women are wired to look for strength, protection, and upward momentum. And when they don't see it, they feel uneasy. Sometimes they don't even understand why. This is why some men feel like they're constantly auditioning, like they can never rest. Because the moment they stop improving, they risk losing everything. It's not enough to love. You must win continuously. The game never ends. And if a man becomes too comfortable, too settled, too complacent, he may discover too late that his partner is no longer fully invested. She may still care. But the fire of attraction, that dies when a man stops rising. Calvin Reid doesn't blame women for this instinct. He exposes it so men can understand the terrain they're walking on. Because once you understand hypergamy, you stop taking things personally. You stop begging for loyalty that's built on illusion, and you start focusing on becoming the kind of man who naturally commands respect, admiration, and desire, not through manipulation, but through consistent growth, self-belief, and purpose. Understanding hypergamy doesn't mean becoming paranoid or resentful. It means becoming aware. And with awareness, you gain power. The power to stop chasing approval and start building a life where you no longer need to ask for loyalty. You earn it, not once, but every day. There's something most people, especially women, don't fully understand about men. It's not that men don't want love. It's not that they don't want connection, intimacy, or support. But if you dig deep into the soul of a man, beneath the surface of what he says, and even beneath what he consciously knows, you'll find that what he craves more than anything is respect. This is the brutal truth Calvin Reid shines a light on. Men are starving for respect, not love. And the reason this truth feels so raw and uncomfortable is because modern society often confuses the two or treats them as interchangeable. But for men, they are not the same. Love without respect feels empty. It feels fake. It feels conditional. A man would rather be respected in silence than adored with condescension. From a very early age, boys are taught that their worth comes from performance. Win the game. Be the hero. Achieve something. Don't cry. Don't complain. Don't fall apart. They are rarely told that their presence alone has value. Instead, they are taught, subtly and directly, that being useful earns praise, admiration, and yes, love. But deeper than praise is a hunger for something even more affirming. The feeling that who they are is honored. Respect is about acknowledgement. It's about being seen as capable, worthy, powerful, even when life isn't going your way. And when a man senses that respect is missing, especially in a relationship, something inside him begins to erode. He may not even be able to articulate it. He just knows something feels off. He becomes irritable, withdrawn, resentful. He starts to disconnect not just from his partner, but from himself. Here's the pattern Reid exposes. A woman can say, "I love you," every day. But if in her tone there is sarcasm, if in her words there is criticism, if in her body language there is disappointment, the man won't hear the love. He'll feel the lack of respect. And that lack cuts deeper than we realize. You can see it play out during arguments. A man may be trying to express himself, and rather than being heard, he's talked over, dismissed, mocked. His opinions are brushed aside, his contributions ignored, his weaknesses highlighted. To him, these aren't just minor irritations, they're threats to his identity. Because for a man, to be disrespected is to feel invisible, irrelevant, and ultimately unloved. The tragedy is that many women don't mean to disrespect their partners. Often they're simply expressing frustration or trying to communicate their needs more directly. But they don't realize how the message is being received. They don't understand that respect is not a bonus for men. It's oxygen. Without it, a man suffocates emotionally, and once that emotional suffocation begins, he starts to shut down. That shutdown is where relationships begin to die, not always with shouting or drama, but in silence, in distance, in avoidance. The man stops sharing his thoughts. He stops initiating affection. He becomes a shell of the partner he used to be, not because he stopped loving, but because he stopped feeling like a man in the relationship. This is why many men leave relationships even when love is still present. Or worse, they stay in relationships and emotionally disappear. They may remain physically loyal, financially supportive, outwardly dependable, but internally, they've checked out. Why? Because they feel more like a failure than a leader, more like a child being scolded than a man being honored. Calvin Reid urges us to face a difficult but necessary truth. A woman's love cannot repair what her disrespect slowly destroys. If a man feels constantly criticized, belittled, or emasculated, no amount of affection or physical intimacy will heal that wound. What he needs is to feel trusted, admired, and respected, especially when he's struggling, especially when life hits him hard, especially when he feels like the world outside is already tearing him down. This doesn't mean that women must worship their partners or ignore bad behavior. It means that if they want a man to thrive, they must learn how to communicate needs without wounding identity. They must learn the power of their words, the way admiration fuels masculine energy, and how respect can transform even a broken man into a king. When a man feels respected, he rises, he leads, he protects, he loves with his full heart without fear of being torn down. Respect makes him bold, generous, committed. But when he feels disrespected, he shrinks, he hardens, he withdraws, not because he doesn't care, but because he doesn't know how to survive in a space that makes him feel small. This is the brutal truth women will rarely admit, because it reveals something uncomfortable about their power in a relationship. But once it's understood, everything can change. Relationships deepen, communication improves, and most importantly, men begin to feel seen, not just as providers or protectors, but as human beings who deserve to be honored, not just loved. In a world constantly demanding more from men, the rarest and most powerful gift a woman can give is not just her love, it's her genuine, unwavering respect. And when that respect is felt, it does something no romance, no intimacy, and no affection ever could. It makes a man want to become better, not because he's forced to, but because he feels worthy of it.